Hello everyone. My name is Tatiana Rahbani. I'm the Senior Coordination Officer of NGOi. Welcome to this virtual panel discussion organized by the Non-Governmental Organizations Initiative, or NGOi, at the American University of Beirut. Today is the 14th of November, and as we speak, our country is at war, a war that has caused deaths, injuries, and mass internal displacement and migration. To say the least, it has left a huge gap in the basic needs of our community. NGOs and civil society organizations in Lebanon have been on the ground providing emergency relief and aid to different communities and vulnerable groups across the country. As a regional hub for NGO development, capacity building, and knowledge sharing, NGOi is holding this panel discussion entitled Civil Society Response to the Conflict in Lebanon, Considerations and Success Factors, as part of a series that we are launching with you today on the civil society sector in Lebanon, a beacon of hope in times of conflict. Today, we will be discussing considerations and success factors of the civil society response through the lens of 5 esteemed panelists who we have the pleasure to have with us today. The discussion will be moderated by Mrs. Noor Al-Arnaout, Associate Director of the Global Health Institute and NGO Initiative at AUB, who has been running the initiative since its establishment and leading its expansion to different countries in the Arab world, including Egypt, Jordan, Tunisia, Morocco, Iraq, Algeria, and others. A few notes before I leave the floor to you, Noor. There will be a Q&A session at the end of the webinar, so please feel free to use the Q&A feature to write your questions or raise your hand, and we will do our best to answer all the questions that we will receive. Also, for those who are interested in the NGO initiative as a whole, please feel free to ask your questions or to send us an email to the email address that we will share in the chat box. Thank you, and Noor, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Tatiana. And to begin, I'd like to thank all the participants who are with us today. Thank you for joining us at such a challenging time. We felt that it is essential as NGOi to hold this webinar series, starting by this panel discussion, as one of our duty as NGO initiative at AUB is to open dialogue and discussion about such important topics, especially when it comes to best practices, when it comes to what's really being implemented on the ground by our local civil society sector and the NGOs. So thank you for the speakers who will be joining us today, and thank you for all the representatives from NGOs and different other organizations who are with us. Before I start, I'd like to ask the panelists if they can kindly turn on the camera so our participants feel that they are engaging with you directly. And for our participants today with us, please feel free to use the Q&A session and the box of Q&A to drop your questions. No, this is not a presentation or a discussion among the panelists. This is a discussion with you. So we're doing this to engage with you. We're doing this to share best practices by our experts as panelists today. But كمان to hear from you about your questions, if you have any specific concerns from your experience on the ground, or if you have any specific questions from what's going to be shared by our experts. So I'm going to start with introducing our first panelist, and I will make sure that we will finish with Farial and Zahi before 4 because Mr. Zahi Shaheen has a meeting with the Prime Minister, so he has to leave right after his intervention. So I'll be starting with Farial.
Farial is... If you want to start with Zahi, no problem for me.
No, just to keep the flow of the discussion, it's ideally
okay.
we should be starting with you, okay? So Farial is a dear expert with us at NGOi. She works with us on multiple projects, but above all, she's a dynamic and experienced NGO consultant and trainer. She is devoted to empowering individuals and communities through capacity building. Farial has more than 10 years of experience in the nonprofit sector. and she serves as the CEO of Farah Social Foundation, which is a local NGO. She's been working with local and international NGOs also to deliver training programs on different topics, including proposal writing, grants management, meal, and other topics. So Fayyad, thank you so much for joining us today. What we want to start to discuss with you is the starting point فعليا and the response of all NGOs on the ground in such challenging times. So I want to ask you, Farial, how important is it to conduct a community assessment as the first and initial step before deploying teams in a situation of response? And what measures are usually taken to ensure that these assessments accurately capture the community's evolving needs across time؟ لأنه إنه their needs بأول الأزمة بتكون different than their needs مثلا 2 weeks after when aid from multiple organizations kicks in and so on. So if you can tell us more about that, Faria.
Thank you so much, Noor. Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you are all safe and well during these difficult times. First, let me start by really expressing my deep gratitude to NGOi, because really you did a very important job in supporting civil society and NGO in Lebanon and the Arab region. NGOi, like I think all know, consistently stands at the forefront in times of crisis, creating space for meaningful dialogue and collaboration, while offering vital resources to strengthen the sector. Really, I'm honored today to discuss the essential topic of community need assessment, because it is the critical first step in any effective emergency response, like Noor said. Conducting a thorough needs assessment before deploying any response teams is important, because we need this assessment to provide a comprehensive understanding of the most urgent need facing communities. This understanding enables us to deliver focused, relevant, and sustainable intervention. By starting with a detailed assessment, we ensure that really we are not only addressing immediate needs in the first few days, but also we are prepared to adapt our intervention as conditions change over time after 1 week or 2 weeks. In any crisis, the initial ability to respond with both speed and precisely can be difference between effectively supporting community and the important unintentionally wasting valuable resources through duplicated efforts, like we see in most of the intervention. Community need assessment lay the foundation of any emergency response by helping responders, any NGO, develop a clear, data-driven picture of what the impacted population requires, because we have a lot of needs now. Unlike assessment conducting during stable or development periods, where needs may evolve slowly and align with long-term goals. Emergency assessment require immediate, precise, and adaptable method to capture urgent needs with clarity. These assessment, how we begin by identifying key information: who has been affected, where they are located, and what specific resources they need, because we have limited resources. Whether essential, like the first day's shelter, food, and hygiene items. And we have also critical service like mobile health support and mental health care. Gathering this comprehensive data quickly and systematically allow the NGOs to allocate resources effectively and ensure that aids really reach all the people, reach the most vulnerable people displaced. It also provides the flexibility needed to adjust intervention as the crisis evolves. Community need assessment also can change fast in crisis situation, because we have factors like now we have example population movement, we have security shifts also, it's very important and critical, and we have this additional challenge as they arise. To address this, organization employ a range of measures, to ensure that needs assessment precisely capture evolving demands. For instance, example, Farah Social Foundation adapts its approach by conducting regular updates of its assessment, enabling teams to respond to changing needs in real time. This includes tracking adjustment in essential like food parcels, hygiene kit, and other resources to reflect the latest condition in each shelter or community. FSF also includes collaboration with partners, which is very important. We partner with the DRM, Disaster Risk Management, the food security sector, and other NGOs to avoid duplicating efforts. This collaborative approach ensures that resources are used efficiently and that all partners have the most up-to-date information. Also, we work closely with the local leaders to gain on-the-ground insights, ensuring that hard-to-reach or dynamic areas, example, remain accessible for us, and that assessment effectively reflect local realities. These measures allow for a responsive and flexible model of support that meets real-time community needs, because we have a lot of needs now, and we need to reach those community and adapt as those needs evolve. If I want to illustrate or to give an example, FSF recently conducted a large-scale assessment. We work in 210 shelters housing IDPs, internal displaced persons, in Shuf, Alay, Beirut, B'Abda, West Bekaa, and Zahim. The initial assessment, we are trying to gather the critical baseline data, including demographic details, specific needs. Example, for the young children, we need diapers. For the women, we need sanitary pads. And recognizing the fluidity of needs. FSF implemented a system. We update our data twice weekly, capturing shift in demand, because at the first they need the basic needs. Now we have other needs, other demand, and we adjust our resources accordingly. This flexible model allows FSF to respond effectively to real-time needs. Example, we establish after 1 week of the crisis, we established 2 community kitchens in Shuf and Alay. In collaboration with World Central Kitchen and Food Security Sector, we are able to provide 3,500 meals daily to shelters. Also, we incorporate disaggregated data to provide target support within shelters based on specific demographic details. Example, our data is disaggregated. We have the number of women, the number of men, the number of children across age group, because the needs of each age group is different. And also if we have elderly, if we have special needs. This level of detail helps us to ensure resources meet unique needs rather than relying on a one-size-fits-all solution. Sure, we have a lot of challenge and in our work and our daily work, but despite the importance of need assessment, organizations often face obstacles and the challenge. Example, we have limited access to certain areas due to the security reason. We have fluctuating numbers in shelter as we have a lot of movement of families. We have limited communication channel. It causes information delays, impacting the timely delivery and aid. How we overcome this challenge? We establish regular data updates and maintain strong partnership with local leaders and organizations. These relationships provide essential update, enhance the effective, the precise information, and facilitate smoother operation in difficult to reach area. To conclude, I don't want to take a lot of time. To conclude, if we want to talk about conducting a community need assessment, we can say that is a very initial step in any emergency response to deliver impactful and meaningful humanitarian aid. Starting with a thorough real-time understanding of community needs, allow organizations to adapt to evolving situation, avoid duplication of resources, and ensure aid reaches those who need it most, because now we have a lot of need. So we want to reach really the people who need it most. I want at the end to really thanks again NGOi for facilitating this discussion. I know you have a very commitment to strengthening the CSO in Lebanon and in Arab region, and this commitment is invaluable, especially in time of crisis, because when coordinated, informed responses is very, very essential. Thank you for your attention, and I look forward to our continued collaboration and shared impact, and for the Q&A session. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Ferial. It's very important that you highlighted how you are coordinating with different organizations and also with the DRM, because this brings us to the points that will be discussed by our next speaker, Mr. Zahi Shaheen. So Zahi is the head of the Disaster Risk Management Unit at the Presidency of the Council of Ministers, spearheading national efforts to enhance Lebanon's resilience to withstand natural and man-made disasters. Unfortunately, you have a very hard job, Zahi. With extensive experience in the local and international public and private sector, he has been investing in his expertise to set the business case to integrate disaster risk reduction into development and resilience. He oversees the development and update of national disaster risk reduction strategies that feed into national action plans. He works with national counterparts to enhance disaster risk reduction structure, capacities, and skills. He is also the national technical focal point for the Sendai framework and rapporteur for several national disaster committees. Thank you so much for joining us, Zahi, today and your willingness to share your experience. So with you, we're going to focus on the importance of data synchronization and coordination. We know that there are several sectors and entities that play a role when it comes to disaster response beside NGOs. يعني مثلا في عندنا البلديات, municipalities, healthcare organizations, the civil defense, so on. من خبرتك, how is data synchronization ensured across sectors during a crisis, and what are the biggest challenges you face in fostering effective inter and cross-sectoral coordination?
Thank you, Noor. Thank you, everyone. It's always a pleasure and an honor to be with you in the discussions and workshops organized by NGOi. I think those discussions are very important, talking about the civil society role. And we previously spoke about its role in pandemic and epidemic response, and now we're talking about its role in this conflict that we're all living in Lebanon. Here, before I start, Noor, we need to understand the level of response we're living nowadays. We're talking about around 1,200 shelters. We're talking about more than 200,000 people registered in collective shelters. We're talking about more than 1 million displaced at the level of household. More than 500,000 people left the country through the borders with Syria. Around 240,000 left through the airport. We have no clue about how many of those people will come back to the country. So we're talking about a huge number of destroyed villages and destroyed houses and buildings. So I think that by itself is one of the biggest response a country can ever live, and without any personal opinion about the role of the civil society and how crucial and important the role of civil society in response in general, and here I'm talking about national, sectoral, and local response. When it comes to a response on this scale, I think we need to discuss how not to discuss the role of the civil society as much as to discuss how to enhance and how to strengthen the collaboration and coordination between civil society and the government, between civil society and local governments, civil society and governorates. So this is something that we have as DRM on our top priority. This is something that we worked on since 2010, working on improving and establishing committees and operation rooms at the level of the governorates was at the first level before getting into the whole capacity building of the people responsible at the level of the governorate. It was mainly to create this connection between and collaboration between the governorate itself and the social and civil society around it, to be able to assess its capacity not by itself as a government representation, but as a community response when it comes to the level of response they can lead on. We're talking about a coordination, and I believe Lebanon took a new level of adoption and implementation of a real coordination with the civil society after COVID-19 response. COVID-19 response was all about data, was all about data management, data collection, reflection of this data on several dashboards, and sharing of this data with involved national and international NGOs, with national and international organizations. So I think the idea was there, and that's exactly what we started with since last October. We activated what we call the soft response at the beginning of the whole conflict between Israel and attacking Gaza. And since then, we had a very close eye on the south of Lebanon borders. And with the beginning of the conflict at the southern borders, we start collecting the data. We start establishing shelters for people to be able to move to. We developed what we call the shelter guidebook. This guidebook was shared with all municipalities for the role they have in overseeing the management of those shelters, and with all NGOs and local actors at the level of the societies, the hosting societies for those shelters. We worked on several dashboards, one to reflect the total number of displacement on the level of shelters and household, another to reflect the needs and the amount of different sectors needs for each and every sector. Another one to reflect what those shelters are receiving from donors, from NGOs, from organizations, to be able to kind of put together a very clear analysis of what we still need to ask for from different sources. We have, and that's something that we did implement again during COVID, during the port explosion. We have what we call the aid distribution dashboard, which is a public dashboard, and I would love to share all those links with you, Noor, and to be shared with all participants to go on and check those dashboards. This particular dashboard is for the transparency and data sharing when it comes to aid distribution. But again, that will not solve the problem of people in need. That will not solve the problem of dealing with around 1.2 million displaced people, displaced citizens of Lebanon all around the country. It will not be sufficient for the hosting communities. It will not be sufficient for other areas that were already considered at the highest level of vulnerability before this whole war started. And that's where we really need to understand that the role of the civil society is as important as the government. And especially when we're talking about a limitation of capacity, a limitation of resources for a government like the government of Lebanon. So we need to believe, even the government, they have to believe in this role. They have to believe of the added value of the civil society. And I think it's there, especially at these days, it's there. It's being overseen by the Prime Minister himself, by the national committees, and by the committees headed by all governors. There's hotlines for civil societies and not for the public to contact the governorates for any support, for any clarification, for any kind of questions to facilitate their work on the ground and their work with beneficiaries at the level of the household or the level of shelters. In the same time, we need to be honest. The whole sector of civil society in general and this is something that's been discussed in the country for the last 20 years, to be organized, to be not evaluated in a way to give grades for people and points for NGOs, as much as as a classification kind of approach of the capacity, the volume of each and every NGO. I think a lot of funds coming to the country I'm trying to be very political here. I don't want to use the word wasted, but at least I can say misused by a lot of very new NGOs. We cannot be, none of us can be an expert in everything. That's the same when it comes to NGOs. We need to have a sector we operate in. We need to have a very clear vision. We need to have a very clear TOR for this NGO, for this group of volunteers, on what they are focusing on, where they operate, with whom do they coordinate. Not in a way for people to kind of translate it of government interfering in the role of NGOs, but as much as putting rules and regulations for this sector. The role of the civil society is huge. The responsibility on its shoulder is huge. If there's any support that can be provided by the DRM, and that's all what we're doing at the time, we're always ready. I urge everyone to get in contact with me personally or with our offices if they need access to any data, if you need access to any information, to any decree or decision taken by the government, and you need more details about those decrees and decisions. Again, we need to invest, all of us. We need to invest in the role of civil society. But exactly what we're doing right now, to discuss this, to kind of share the experience, share the know-how, and especially that a lot of people here, and I'm not sure if this is something positive for us as Lebanese, to live as many responses in our life as the ones we lived. I hope we reach an end to this war very soon, and I hope to implement the recovery for the country in a very well-tailed approach, leaving no one behind and building back better, because that's, I think, how resiliency is always built. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Zahi. يعني كمان لأنه we have a lot of people with us who are attending today who are not from Lebanon. So just to give them a bit of background, the Disaster Risk Management Unit doesn't only deal with the disasters like wars. It also deals with other disasters that are unfortunately happening also now with the war, like fires, مثلا.
In the last 5 years, Noor, we had flash floods, forest fires, port explosion, cholera, COVID, war.
So يعني Lebanon by itself is such an interesting
spills,
case study.
Everything. You just name it, we respond to it.
يعني so يعني it's really يعني no matter how much effort they invest, يعني there will always be a gap. وحتى no matter how much the civil society organizations or NGOs عم يشتغلوا, there will always be a gap لأنه يعني it's one disaster after the other, and then we need to remember that there are many NGOs and civil societies that emerge out of disasters, right? يعني for the past لنشوف 10 to 15 years في عنا مثلا NGOs that مثلا emerged out of the Syrian refugee crisis. Okay, they existed من وراء الكرايسيس. Many become كمان donor driven, يعني بيكونوا هن بيشتغلوا one in a specific sector, and then when a certain crisis appears, they shift their whole portfolio, بيصيروا بيشتغلوا in a totally different domain مثلا or sector.
That's where I was saying, Noor, you need to have a close eye on the work of these NGOs, and again, that was something that I needed to highlight. As important as the coordination and the data management and the work done on the level of civil society and government in response to this whole conflict on the ground, on the field, what we're doing now, what NGOi is always leading on when it comes to these discussions, is the base for the future in evaluating ourselves, in kind of really being honest on how can we improve. asking this question, being honest, and accept the projection and the description of the challenges and gaps we have and we face, to be able to kind of move forward in the future.
Thank you, Zahi. I don't want to take more of your time because I know you have to leave. So thank you for your contribution. Someone asked about the link for the dashboard. I just want
I will
to
share it all with you, Noor.
inform the participants that we will share all the links with you after this
And I need
session.
to apologize from everyone that I have to leave early, but it's just a crazy time today.
And any question that's being addressed to you, we will share it with you later by email, and you can respond directly to the participants.
Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, Zahi.
Thank you. Have a great one.
So with this, we move to our next speaker, Imad Bazzi. Thank you so much for joining us today. Long time. I'm really happy to see you حتى لو virtually. Last time I saw you come in, it was after a disaster. It was after the Beirut port explosion. Unfortunately متثائب بنشوفك بس بعد بالdisasters. But I hope this changes soon. So just to introduce everybody to Imad, Imad is an award-winning advocacy and outreach expert and trainer, currently serving as the Director of Advocacy at the International Network for Aid, Relief and Assistance, INARA, with programs serving in Lebanon, Gaza, Ukraine, Afghanistan, Egypt, and Turkey. Imad has worked for several international organizations, including the UN, Greenpeace, and the Institute for War and Peace Reporting, and other leading advocacy campaigns in conflict-impacted areas. His work has been recognized by Foreign Policy magazine as among the most influential in the Middle East. Imad is also the author of the best-selling book, Behind the Walls of Beirut. So again, thanks for joining us today, Imad. My question to you is, for civil society in Lebanon now, what level of advocacy and policy influence is realistically achievable during times of conflict? And what factors determine the effectiveness of these efforts? I imagine you're muted, we can't hear you.
Yes. Thank you, Noor, and everyone, and thank you for this chance to talk to everyone. I would like to just apologize to everyone because I will not be able to. I'm not really comfortable with having my camera on because I'm in a migrant center on the Ukrainian borders. So it's a little bit against the instructions to have my camera on the whole time. So I would excuse myself to turn the camera off. Okay, and sorry for that, but it's the regulations. So again, thank you, Noor, and everyone, and thank you for hosting me. Unfortunately, I don't really share such optimistic views on the plans and the response process. And I do think my response, Noor, to your question might be a little bit politically incorrect, but trying to set things straight. Because civil society in Lebanon usually faces unique challenges that you don't see anywhere else. I've been working in Afghanistan, Iraq, Libya, Chad, you name it. But our own set of hinders and challenges is something you don't see anywhere else. However, a realistic level of influence is still achievable, but that largely depends on, like in terms of effectiveness, on a set of factors. And because we are in Lebanon, of course, factor number one is the political climate and the government openness to talking with the Lebanese civil society. Lebanon had literally 11 months to prepare for the catastrophe and the conflict that was escalating, that everybody saw coming, but somehow everybody kept denying them until it came like an unfortunate reality. So many plans were put in place, so many coordination committees, but the level of displacement and those sudden waves really messed up those entire plans. So back to the subject, Lebanon's political structure and the responsiveness of the leaders, of the political leaders in Lebanon, significantly shapes the potential for CSOs to influence this process, because during conflict, those political groups and other groups affiliated with them and the government, they prioritize somehow different things. They prioritize security and the political atmosphere. Like, just look at what is happening now. This limits the openness of the government to dialogue with the civil society groups. However, I can still see that the bare minimum level of coordination is maintained. We do have some sort of a consortium of NGOs, of INGOs that are active in cooperation with the ministers that are involved and the bodies that are involved. So level number one is the political climate and the political influence on the political scene in Lebanon. Number two is Lebanon's access to international support and resources. And believe it or not, and this is, I don't feel really comfortable saying that, but I'm going to say it the way it is. The first few days, the international community was really hesitant whether to offer fund or not. I have heard people say, why would we fund a disaster that was totally like you could have ditched it? I heard that, and that was totally unfortunate. But we still need support from international organizations. That includes funding, training, platforms that can be set up for international and local advocacy. This can empower actually local groups and international networks, not only to provide resources, but also to amplify the needs we have beyond Lebanon's borders. So we can use that for diplomatic pressure on regional governments and more access to aid. So the civil society has a role to play when we need international support. We have to drive international support so we can gain more access to resources, because we have millions of people on the streets. This needs a huge amount of resources to deal with that. The third level is, let's go internal a little bit. We need public support and mobilization of the public itself, because this widespread support within the local population really strengthens the civil society's impact and creates those community-driven campaigns that resonate with the citizens. So there's the governmental level, the plans, the whatever things they do, but there is the people getting together, helping each other provide security, food, healthcare, all those initiatives you see. This traction that was generated, it was generated by people, and later on, believe it or not, the decision makers did manage to catch up, but the civil society, the pressure and the role they played with the public, mobilizing public towards more volunteer work, towards more initiatives, is what drove people to help, and it is what took people out of the streets on the first few days. Another level, which is a component that we need in each and every advocacy campaign, is access to media and communications channel. I'm not going to talk much about that. I'm going to leave a huge chunk of that to Mr. Eli to talk about it. But during conflict, the civil society's ability to communicate their messages and their needs over traditional media becomes, let's say, non-existent, because the huge chunk of airtime goes to political analysts, if they can analyze anything. But regardless, we depend on social media to directly impact and influence others. This dependency on social media has proven to be a very powerful tool in mobilizing Lebanese youth, the diaspora, to provide platforms for advocacy, to provide donations, to provide support, like bypassing this restriction on traditional media in favor of politicians, not the people. I can mention a lot of initiatives, like there are influencers who turned from food blogging into providing hot meals for people. A friend, Coach Beast, is cooking more than 1,000 hot meals a day and delivering them to people in need. There's another initiative that came out from it's called Julia's Fist. It's an organization that was named after Julia, who lost her life while helping people. So her brothers carried on that initiative. So this use of social media is crucial in advocacy and pushing people and the government to catch up and showing what is the real situation. Number 5 or 6, I lost count, is another hinder and another challenge is the alignment with the regional and sectarian interests we have in Lebanon. We are in Lebanon, and the Lebanese political landscape is shaped and structured by those sectarian affiliations. For civil society organizations to navigate through this raging sea of troubled waters and sensitivities, it's not easy. So such alignment must be handled, when done, must be handled carefully in a way that avoids tensions and compromising neutrality of the organizations. We've been working in areas that are like of certain sectarian nature or a mixed sectarian nature. Sometimes it's hard to navigate within those sensitivities, but we are managing, and like other civil society organizations are managing to work on that. So also another important point is the coordination with the humanitarian organizations that are already there, like partnering with those organizations. This is mainly the role of civil society to get those humanitarian organizations, whether local or international, to join and to merge their advocacy efforts for humanitarian goals, creating a stronger or a unified front to influence policy making. Because to this day, literally, I have no idea what the government is planning to do in case like what is the sustainable plan for this rapid response intervention if the war ends now and you have over 1.6 million people who have lost their homes. What are we going to do? Are we going to keep them in the sports city stadium, turn it into a house for them, so we can see history repeating itself when the sports city stadium became home of like around 200,000 people from 1982 till 1993? Is that what we want? We need to do something about that. So in terms of realistic outcomes, the first outcome is the emergency response. Like the civil society can effectively advocate for the immediate needs, like the humanitarian aid, the infrastructure repair, and emergency health care services, and dignity kits for women, formula milk for children, and such types of emergencies. We need to work on long-term policy reforms because while most challenges can be addressed immediately and are the priority, civil society can lay this groundwork for the post-conflict policy changes. We need to know and we need to document what happened and how we advocated through those channels. And also we need community-based programs like advocacy for government reform, education, economic initiatives, things that strengthen the community and prevent its collapse in case another catastrophe of that scale happens again. So in essence, like while direct policy changes may be challenging on now our short term, what advocacy focused on humanitarian needs and raising international awareness and local level improvements are often achievable and impactful if we use the right channels to address them. But to actually use the right channels, we need to know the local challenges and hinders we have at hand. Sorry for...
Thank you, Imad. Thank you, Imad. Yani, for those of you who don't really know Imad, his honesty is always valued. لأنه he says things as they are. He does not usually beautify them or care about the extent of how much he needs to be politically correct in saying things. So that's one thing we value and truly appreciate about your contribution, Ahmad. So two things I want to comment on from your intervention. The first is about the individual initiatives that emerged from this crisis or in response to this crisis. I just want to highlight to participants that as part of this discussion series, we will be hosting one panel discussion with individuals who came up with really influential initiatives in response to this crisis. So stay tuned to that. Second, about social media and its power to, bring in issues that are, kept hidden or that are not really well addressed. So I just want to highlight a very simple example before giving the floor to Eli. To talk about social media specifically is the issue of migrant workers, for example. When it all happened and one of the media platforms posted a video about the migrant workers who were left in different areas across Lebanon and then gathered on the Raml al-Bayda. And then it was actually one of the NGOs who handled this situation and ensured, the transfer of the migrant workers to a safe shelter to spend the night and then to discuss their matters with their embassy. So this is a very simple example about the power of social media. And with this, I move to Eli Serkis. Eli, thanks for joining us today. Eli is the co-founder and managing partner of Interact International, recently recognized among the top 10 influential business leads in the Middle East. He has over 12 years of expertise in digital marketing, communications, and business growth. He is a verified master trainer and inbound marketing certified professional. He's dedicated to driving digital transformation through practical hands-on training programs that create real impact, generating awareness, engagement leads, and measurable results for his clients. Eli's work spans a wide range of industries. Beyond his role at Interact, he also teaches digital marketing at multiple universities in the region and beyond. And his insights have been featured on international media, where he shapes the latest trends and practical strategies for success in today's dynamic digital landscape. Eli, welcome to this discussion and thanks for joining us. My
Thank you,
question
Noor.
to you is, how can NGOs effectively leverage the digital platforms to showcase their work during the crisis to attract funding? And what are some common pitfalls to avoid during these communications?
Yep.
And we know about the power of social media. Almost, many of us, social media serves as the source of information for them in this war. And so we are spending a lot of time on different social media platforms. So how can NGOs leverage this?
So thank you, Noor, first for the introduction. Hello, everyone. Actually, we have a lot to talk when it comes to social media, especially with everything that's happening in Lebanon. And today, as you mentioned, the role of NGOs is crucial every day, especially that you mentioned, like in the midst of crisis, NGOs work, and here comes like the work of NGOs. So the conflict here has created an urgent need for resources. Digital platforms are, as always, a crucial platform when it comes to sharing news, updates, and bridging the gap. So this will help definitely NGOs reach out to global communities, really support, secure funding also for the fundraising campaigns, definitely all necessary funds to sustain their operations. So today I'll be focusing on the key strategies. I'll be talking about 4 key strategies to follow when it comes to NGOs working on social media in the midst of crisis. Then I'll be talking about some pitfalls and practical also tips, what to do on Meta, on Instagram, Facebook. How can we use and make the most of these social media platforms in order to really reach our objectives in these times. So let's talk first about the key strategies to make the most of the digital platforms when it comes to a crisis or a war situation like what's happening today. The main point or the first point I'll be tackling is transparency. And here I want to align with Zahi when he mentioned how much it's important to be honest, because really transparency is essential. And now with the example that you mentioned, we know what kind of role social media can play, and even like a small fake news can turn into a worse news as well. So people around the world, not just in Lebanon, expats around the world, they want really to know the latest updates. They want to exactly, in terms of donation, they want to know where their donations are going and who they are helping. So sharing real-time updates, not a question, is crucial. And I'm talking here about updates from the field, from whether it's photos of aid arriving in bombed areas, videos from neighborhoods, stories capturing the resilience and what people are really living and how they are coping with everything that's happening. So these kind of images, I know that sometimes it's hard to share this, but these kind of real stories, definitely while maintaining the policies, the taking into consideration the emotional part of the audience, these kind of images give supporters like immediate sense of what's happening and the level of the how crucial the situation is. So I'm sure we're all living this never-ending scroll on social media, checking for real-time updates, and especially for people abroad. Like I hear literally till today, I hear every day people scrolling down, checking for news. They are waiting for the time to go back to Lebanon, and they feel this, like home sickness emotional level, if you can say. So the transparency here, it's not about credibility. It's more about bringing the crisis closer to supporters, motivating them to stay engaged, stay keep talking about Lebanon, what's happening, and support whatever they can. The second point is the sense of urgency and the empathy that we can share on social media. So, building on transparency, storytelling also is one of the most powerful ways to make Lebanon situations real for audiences. Instead of just relying on statistics, numbers, definitely they are important. I'm not saying that they are not, but people need to see real facts, real images, real videos of what's happening, seeing, let's say, the team of NGOs, how they are working on the ground. This will build the trust. And this kind of storytelling, I'm not talking about just like sharing videos and what's happening just in the bombed areas. So we need to share the personal stories that reveal both the struggles and resilience of the people affected. So, for example, when we show the story of a mother finding shelter for their children despite the destruction. These stories like really speak louder than the numbers and statistics that we have every day. So once we see such stories, we remind people, and people will be reminded as well, of the shared humanity that we need to have, and this will inspire them and their community, inspire their action, even if they are far away in terms of distance. The third point, now here I'll move to the digital campaigns. So the campaigns running on different platforms, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and other platforms. So it's very important to know that each platform has its unique strength. So we don't want to use every platform like the other, and not to share always the same kind of format, content format on all platforms. So, because each platform with its strength, and in a war, we can use it wisely. I'll give some examples. So on Instagram, visuals and short videos, they capture immediate on-the-ground experiences, while LinkedIn, it can help us not just to share the real-time update, but it helped us share the content and reach international organizations, communities, and corporate donors who might be able to offer large-scale support. So using platform-specific hashtags, for example, the language, the tonality. Now with the development of AI, we have some AI tools like writer.me, other than definitely ChatGPT. These tools can, using such tools, you can choose the tonality. For example, I can say that I want to write a caption for a story of what's happening, of the bombed area that happened today, for example. And I can choose the tonality to be assertive on LinkedIn, to be convincing if I'm looking for donations. So I have this flexibility, and this is what we need to take into consideration while delivering a message, not just copy paste everything everywhere, because these small details will definitely make a difference. So the fourth point, I won't talk about the partnerships with trusted voices, content creators, influencers. So these kind of collaborations with local influencers, journalists, community leaders. So we know that in Lebanon, we have this strong network of trusted voices. So people we see speaking up about Lebanon every day. And I really feel like when all this happened and when I saw all these people talking about Lebanon, although like I was very sad about the situation, but I was happy and I didn't expect like everyone talking and sharing the same news. So this really felt really good, and this is very important. And the impact here is definitely to collaborate with people who are sharing the real stories, not just using these stories for personal reasons. So we have a strong network. We can partner with such people to help extend our reach, brings credibility to the cause itself. So when these respective people, figures share our content, the content will reach people who may not be familiar with the NGO, for example, but they trust them, they follow their account. So even if they are not within the industry or the nonprofit industry. So these partnerships can make a huge difference, rallying new supporters, keeping attention on the crisis in Lebanon as it unfolds. Moving on to some practical tips. Talking a lot, I'm trying to cover everything, but I will talk about the practical tips and then fast we move into the pitfalls. So to stay effective, we need to know what resonates with our audience. If we're creating a campaign, who's seeing this campaign? What's the target audience? So digital tools make this possible all over the channels. For example, if you use analytics on Facebook and Instagram, we can see each type of content and which type of content is getting results. Is it the video, the image, or what kind of content exactly? So this definitely will help us refine the approach. We know what's working, what's not, how to deliver the right message, how to deliver the story that we're talking about. And different platforms also offer unique ways to connect. So as an example, here we have this panel online on Zoom. We can go Instagram live. If you have a broadcast channel as an NGO, you can go live and talk about the situation, have some discussion with the collaborators as well. On Instagram, we have the questions and the stickers. So it's very important to listen to what people have in mind. Instagram stories can really provide daily updates, like NGOs are using them, but use the stickers, the questions, the polls, anything that can help the NGO gather some data, understand people's need more. Moving to the common pitfalls, naturally, there are some common pitfalls we need to be careful of. First, in a crisis, definitely simplicity, clarity. Imad and Zahi talked about this. We need to avoid the overly technical approach. So keep the language simple. Do not use a lot of technicalities, just to deliver the message smoothly and in a very direct way, straightforward way. It's very important also to know that Meta and other platforms, they have in their algorithm something that you cannot write text in a way that it will be offensive. So try always to use a simple approach and consider the feelings of the audience. There's also a temptation to use over dramatic content to capture attention, but the situation is already dramatic. So people want honest, genuine information, and definitely post with sensation can damage the credibility with the overdone post, I mean. So right now, people respond best to the truth when it's hard, as long as it's presented with hope and definitely resilience. Finally, it's essential to focus on the immediate crisis. We cannot forget about the long-term supporters. So those who stood by the NGOs in different crises. So we should also tailor some campaigns and messages, email stuff to those supporters as well. And yeah, this is it. In this current state, social media and all channels are crucial. So when used in a smart way, in a thoughtful way, uh, all platforms can help us attract immediate support, reach, and spread the word more. And by sharing real stories, most importantly, definitely this will connect supporters with the NGOs and the audiences in need. And yeah, that's it.
Thank you so much,
Thank
Ali.
you.
This is such a broad topic that I don't think can be limited to a discussion of,
Yeah.
10 minutes about it.
Yeah.
And I believe we should have like sort of a follow-up, maybe webinar that is focused on this. لأنه this is really and a very important, يعني given really the voices that are being heard over social media and the power of such platforms. We already have some questions to you. We will address them at the end, but before that, I want to give the floor to Mrs. Rula. Rula, thank you for joining us today and يعني keeping the best to the last. I want to build on what Ali Kaman mentioned. So many NGOs, Kaman, they feel that social media is one way of them to express the work they are doing because this will attract funders. And this will, yeah, لأنه many funding agencies or donors, they like, being featured on social media as in إنه مثلا هيدا ال NGO is doing this work and supporting these beneficiaries with the support of X, Y, and Z donors. So this is something attractive to funding agencies in general. So I want to ask you a question about that, but before it, I want to introduce you properly to the participants with us today. Rula Wahda Abbas is an experienced program manager with over 30 years in international development, primarily with the EU delegation in Lebanon and UNDP in Saudi Arabia. Over her 22 years with the EU, Rula focused on advancing civil society's role in Lebanon's development, advocating for political, policy, and social engagement, particularly for women and youth. She led the monitoring and evaluation of numerous EU-funded civil society, youth, and gender programs, managing budgets exceeding 12 million euros. So, Rula Kaminchi has promoted significant partnerships with local stakeholders, facilitating dialogue and cooperation between civil society and government actors. Currently, she works as an independent, result-oriented monitoring expert with ILO certification and monitoring and evaluation, and she continues to support EU values, emphasizing gender equality and effective civil society participation and development. So, Rula brings to this discussion the sort of donor and funding agency perspective, given her, expertise with them. She knows how they think, she knows what they like, so she will be reflecting يعني with us today about يعني and sharing with us if she has any advice that she can give to adapt the projects of the NGOs to the current situation. يعني we know لأنه there are many NGOs who have been running projects pre-war that are not related at all يعني to humanitarian aid or assistance. يعني في projects مثلا about digitalization, project about I don't know biodiversity, protecting the environment. كل هول الأشياء they may be twisted to be sort of applicable to the context of crisis, but originally they were not related at all. So what advice do you give to these NGOs? And at the same time, how can funders best support this flexibility to ensure impactful outcomes?
Okay, thank you, Noor. Thank you also for NGOi for giving this opportunity to highlight the importance of the role that civil society is playing, as mentioned by all panelists. Actually, now we all agree after all these discussion that in conflict situation, CSOs are always the fastest in delivering and addressing the consequences of crisis. And this has been demonstrated over the past few years, where Lebanon faced many crises, be it the COVID, be it the port of Beirut blast, and the current crisis. In this way, there is, it's evident that flexible funding is highly needed by civil society. It allows, because why? Because it allows, on one hand, for them to respond quickly for the emergent and urgent needs that arise, and second, to focus more in their program on the objective rather than on the administrative burden, which is related, to reporting, measuring impact, and so on. However, using the flexible funding, so to say, is quite challenging for both donors and civil society. Before entering into the details about the challenges, let's define what is flexibility funding. Flexibility funding for donors, it can take different forms. I will talk more about the EU way of flexible funding. You have several forms that allow CSOs to use the available funds at the right time and without restrictions from the donors. I mentioned like core funding, where the funds are given to civil society to mainly, I would say, either survive as a CSO, so they use the funds to fund administrative costs, cover overhead costs, and so on, or to implement initiatives that are needed in crisis situation. And the EU, they have like an instrument called European Endowment for Democracy, EED, which allows CSOs to apply online for emergency needs. I mean, for funding in emergency crisis. There is also another form, which is the multi-year funding, which provides also CSOs with a kind of sustainability to respond effectively in crisis situation. And this is also like a programming. The most common flexible funding, I would say, that EU, for instance, has adopted is the reallocation of funds. Like you have mentioned, there are projects that are not at all linked to the crisis situation. In this situation, the EU allowed previously, and I believe still allow, to just adapt some of the project activities to meet the urgent and emerging need. For instance, I can give an example. In the COVID pandemic, or in the port of Beirut blast, I would say the port of Beirut blast, we had like a gender program, which was focusing on promoting and supporting women entrepreneurs in general. Okay. When the port of Beirut, when there was the port of Beirut blast, we had at EU requested the implementing partners to assess the project activities and explore any possibility to reallocate some of the funds to respond to the crisis situation. And actually, this has led to two main things under this project. First of all, we have created a specific budget, which was not foreseen in the project, a small budget, to support the women entrepreneur who were affected by the blast. And at the second point, that they allowed the civil society to just do a budget reallocation and increase what we call a sub-granting scheme to women, also to address the needs of women entrepreneurs in crisis situation. So what I want to say is that the mainly reallocation of funds is not something that cannot be done. On the contrary, it has to be requested. If not requested by EU, it has to be requested by the civil society, because there is always this flexibility in the way of funding, even under program. Now we go back to the challenges, because when we use flexible funding, it's something we'd say challenges for both civil society and the funding donors. For the civil society, I would say, for instance, the main challenge is how to demonstrate the effective use of funds, because we know that the donor, they are really concerned to know more about what is the impact given by using our funds. In project, each activity is linked to a specific fund, a budget line. But in flexible funding, the administrative and the reporting procedures are less restrictive. So here, it's the civil society concern and role to demonstrate how effectively they are using their fund. And here I can link it to what Eli has mentioned about the communication, the way they communicate. It's not only that we did that or we didn't do that. No, it's about communication, how they are managing their funds also in a transparent way. Also, this is linked also to on the way they will show the impact they have. It's demonstrated with the funding they are given. Some CSOs, they found this flexible funding as challenging in terms of guaranteeing a stable, I would say, long-term sustainability. Why? Because they cannot guarantee that there will be this financial sustainability, that financial funding, sustainable funding across the year. So it's creating a kind of financial instability for social society if they rely mainly on the flexible funding. For the donors, the main challenge would be the accountability and transparency. As I mentioned, donors are worried mainly about the management of the funds and the control, the lack of control if they use flexible funding, because there will be less restriction and accountability. So the EU Commission, for instance, and why? Because they have also their own commitment, because the EU is also accountable for the sources, the funding donor resources, like the EU member state. They are accountable for the EU member state for the development cooperation program. They would like to see the tangible results for the funding. They would like to have like a tracking, I don't know, the colleague from the DRM, he mentioned the aid distribution dashboard. So I don't know if this also includes the tracking, not only of the impact of the program, but also on the funding, how the funding is being dispersed, because this is really crucial for the donor. And at last, I would say that the flexible funding needs, the main challenge is that it needs a high level of trust between civil society and the donor. And this, we all know that it's not something easy to achieve. So it needs quite a long time to build this trust, but there is, a room for both civil society and donors to work on that. So in conclusion, to maximize the positive impact of flexible funding, both CSOs and donors, they have to jointly address the challenges I have just mentioned. So we need to build the donor confidence through demonstrating accountability and transparency measures in our work as civil society, like in the reporting, regular assessment, monitoring, lessons learned. And here comes the role of AUB and NGOi, where we need to focus on empowering the CSOs so that they are partners for the development and not service provider as sometimes it has this role. So empowering them means that increasing their level of competence so that they can manage funds, number one, give impact and build confidence from the donor side. So the actual impact will be measured more easily if the civil society are quite empowered to do that. I can give here an example how to address the challenges from CSO and donor side. I don't know, I'm sure you are all aware of the 3RF, which is the Reform, Recovery and Reconstruction Framework, which was set out by the World Bank, EU and UNDP following the Port of Beirut blast. They have established an independent oversight board in which civil society, government, and donors, the donors, they were, they allocated pool fund to respond to the urgent need. So this structure is the one that was monitoring the implementation of the 3RF program on one hand, and this give space for the CSOs to be included in monitoring also the funds that are given by the donor. So flexible funding is important, and we have again, I can see that not only it's to provide specific funding as flexible funding. There are many ways that EU is giving as flexible funding. For example, in each grant, they have in the budget something called 7% threshold for indirect cost. So for any EU funded program, CSO can use these 7% to the maximum of the total cost of the program to cover indirect costs, which could include rent, office supplies, and general, without any proof of evidence. So this is of expenditure. So this is a kind of flexible. Doesn't have to be a specific budget, but it's included in all programs. You have also the sub-granting scheme, which gives also space to grassroots organizations to be engaged in implementing initiative within a large program without a predefined objective and specific type of activity. So also CSO can use this sub-granting scheme and include it in their proposal with a specific budget, and this is very much welcome by the EU. So this is also considered a type of flexible funding because they will decide on what to work within this program at a later stage. It doesn't have to be decided upon the submission of the proposal. And in emergency situation, as I mentioned, the reallocation of funds is something that is possible. It has to be, demanded by the civil society, if not requested by the donor. It will, provided that they will have, strong accountability in their proposal to measure the impact, as I said, and transparent communication. And here we go back to the communication issue, because these are the ways to build the confidence between civil society and the donors. So this is in a nutshell some of the hints that I wanted to share with you to just explain that flexible funding is not only a fund per se given to the civil society. It can be given through the different types of funding modalities and instruments that the donor has.
Thank you
That's
so
all
much,
from my
Mila.
side.
And from our experience, I'd like to share كمان with the attendees إنه it's always very important to keep a very هيك smooth communication with the donors and not to perceive them as someone هيك living on another planet that we can only reach out to when we want to submit a narrative report or a financial report. The program officer اللي عند the donor or funding agency should become eventually your best friend when you are working with them on a particular project, لأنه you can relay any challenges you are facing, any risks that may arise, and they will be your supporter when you need to have this sort of flexibility at any point in time when implementing the project. So I really encourage CSOs to maintain this strong line of communication and relationship with the program officers of the funding agencies they are dealing with. So we have a couple of questions. I will address 3 questions, but one to Imad, one to Eli, and another to Farial. Before wrapping up, we'll try to wrap up by 5 sharp. So first to Imad, from Claude Smeha Basmi Zaitoune. How can emergency response frameworks be innovatively restructured to authentically incorporate the perspectives and lived experiences of affected participants, ensuring their insights shape not only immediate relief strategies, but also address underlying issues such as restrictive assessments and emerging conflict around social cohesion? With tension already surfacing, how can we proactively manage these challenges to mitigate the longer-term social conflicts that often escalate in crises like that? Imad?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes, you can
Yeah.
hear you.
Okay. I'll tailor my answer towards Basmi Zaitoune in specific. To do that, you need community-driven assessments and planning. Framework should begin with the assessment led by the affected communities, where you establish community-based advisory boards and conduct those workshops, and if possible, where the voices of the community is heard and added into the list of priorities. You need localized and culturally informed trainings for responders. You need to empower the local organizations where you shift part of your funding and the authorities actually to those local organizations that already have this what we call a trust network within the affected communities. You need also a human-centered design and response distribution. For example, rather than distributing those standard relief kits, customize them in a way that meets the diverse needs, accommodating like their dietary needs, their cultural considerations, their medical needs. There has been incidents where 8 boxes were sent that includes some type of food that a certain community does not consume, for example. So you need to be aware on that. You need to also establish this formal feedback loop with the affected people, because they will give you the response and like you can collect this data through surveys, the focal groups, digital platforms. Use your social media for that. You can also embed lived experiences. We at Inara, for example, we like to recruit individuals who have lived through similar crises in general. We include them in policy making and planning the roles within the organization, within the restructuring of our rapid response intervention, because they carry a unique perspective that can prevent those kind of escalations and like build a more genuine framework towards the response. Also need to be flexible and decentralized, which is the most important thing. Like build this flexibility into the decision-making process where the decision is decentralized and it comes from the staff that is on the ground, because they understand the community needs and they are in direct contact with the community representatives. And by integrating those approaches and the emergency response framework, you can have a more responsive and more inclusive and a more sustainable type of intervention.
Thank you so much, Imad. I hope this answered your question, Claude. Another question to Eli. Someone's asking, what about shadow banning and content moderation on social media platforms?
Yeah, so unfortunately, some of our posts may get restricted or shadow banned, even if they are accurate or respectful. And this is especially problematic in Lebanon because visibility can directly impact the donations, the support NGOs receive, basically. So to work around this, we have different strategies that we can do. So basically, it's very important to know what are the guidelines of each platforms. When sharing the stories, although we have this, like feelings inside, we want to share the real story, but still we need to look at the language, at the tonality. So frame posts around humanitarian impact instead of just explicit conflict terms. Do not use like terms that are might be offensive or might be restricted. So the formats also can affect this. So images, videos, even in the video, for example, in the subtitles, you might use some content, but in the thumbnail, do not use any a word that might be restricted. There's two things that we can do also. First, when collaborating with influencers and creators, basically when you collaborate with verified accounts to amplify the messages, although definitely we're going to increase the reach, but when collaborating with verified accounts, this will reduce the percentage or the possibility of getting restricted, because verified accounts have this privilege on Meta, for example. And another point is that now with the new update of Instagram, Facebook, and WhatsApp as Meta, NGOs can now apply to be verified, so to have the blue badge. Before, it was in the settings, you need to fill information, articles, and stuff. Today, it's a matter of subscription. You can subscribe, upload documents, and within like few hours, the account will be verified. Once you are verified, you have immediate support with Meta. You can contact the support team, and also the account will be more secured and will be less likely to be restricted or shadow banned. If you don't have the update so far, just wait for the upcoming update because it's done through IDs. And I suggest like everyone to verify the account because definitely it will affect the credibility, visibility, but also the security stuff with Meta.
Thank you, Eddie. Very clear. And for Faryal, Amal Karaki asked, is there an operational platform that brings, or an operational forum that brings together CSOs currently working to address the ongoing crisis in order to ensure an efficient response to the pressing needs and avoiding the
Yes, thank you for your question. Yes, we do have a sector-specific working group under OCHA that coordinates efforts between CSOs and NGOs addressing the ongoing crisis. And if you want, in particular, the food security sector's working group is very, very active, and it plays a crucial role in ensuring efficient response to the urgent needs and to not duplicate the efforts of the NGO. So we have working group, and any NGO can join this working group.
Thank you, Faryal. But I believe كمان there are different other platforms, right? يعني في كمان different working groups by different UN agencies. They are all يعني
That's it. Called the
platforms
working
for
group.
yeah.
Working group under
Yeah.
OCHA. We have the food security sector is very active
Okay.
now on this crisis, and we have also the health sector, migrant workers sectors. For each sector, we have a working group. Well, they are very active. Well, they have international and national NGO. Well, all the intervention in this crisis, it's mentioned and it's discussed between them.
Perfect. Okay. I hope this answers the question. And I'll try to address one last question to Eli. So how does compassion fatigue affect public engagement and donor response in prolonged crises, like what happened, unfortunately, with Gaza aggression, and what strategies can humanitarian organizations employ to maintain sustained empathy and support over time?
So basically, we're talking about, like the similar subject. I know it's a challenging, but it is a real challenge. But in the ongoing situation, we need to have some efforts and time more about the content. So, for example, to keep the public engagement, the donor support strong, you need to consider a few strategies like rotating or repurposing the storytelling style, uh, engage the update through impact, share direct impact through email marketing campaigns to your donors, to your database, alternate stories if they are being restricted with resilience, progress, hope, the positive messages that are less likely to face the same, and highlighting small wins can really inspire and uplift supporters. You can also personalize the donor engagement. So send personalized messages or thank you notes, for example, reminding the donors that their contributions are really valuable and impactful, and show them the impact, like we discussed. Collaborate with the new people and definitely try to always diverse the content format. Videos are more likely to be more engaged, but still we can share other formats like carousels, images, to present in different engaging ways. This will also helps the fatigue by offering variety of content format and engagement on the channel.
Thank you, Eddie. We have some other questions, but we will address these separately by emails to the participants and
Sure.
between the panelists and participants for the sake of time. I just want to thank everyone who joined us today this important discussion. Thanks to the panelists and to the attendees. We promise you that we will try our best to keep bringing to you important panel discussions during this tough period of time, and to highlight very important initiatives that are taking place in Lebanon and the region to support this crisis. Thank you so much for joining, and we will catch up and